You know the words, but the moment you try to put them into a sentence, everything falls apart. You hesitate, you overthink, and suddenly German feels way harder than it should. But here is the truth. German sentence structure isn't complicated. It's just often taught in a confusing, grammar-heavy way that makes it feel intimidating and overwhelming. If that resonates with you, today's lesson is for you. Because today I'll show you the most important sentence patterns you need to start speaking without the grammar overwhelm. If you're new here, hello and herzlich willkommen. I'm Salome and I specialize in helping total beginners go from zero to confident and conversational in German, especially those who feel overwhelmed by grammar and don't know what to focus on. My approach is very simple. We don't start with complicated rules. We start with the sentence patterns you actually need to speak in real life, so you can build correct sentences fast, even as a beginner. So if your goal is to finally start speaking instead of overthinking every word, you're in the right place. All right, let's break this down step by step. So on a very, very basic level, you only need two components to form a complete sentence in German. The subject, so the thing or the person who is doing the action, and the verb, which is the action, so what is being done. Let's take a look at a few practical examples. Ich lese. So ich is the subject, the thing or the person who is doing the action, and lese, to read, is the action. Or ich lerne. Again, ich is the subject, lerne is the action. That's already a full sentence in German. So far, so good. If this feels more manageable for you and it is making sense, remember, building sentences is simply a skill that needs practice. And that's exactly why I created my free sentence builder guide. It includes the most common verbs, useful time words, which we'll get into in a second, and ready to use chunks. So you can literally take them, plug them into the pattern, and start forming your own sentences right away. If you'd like that, just comment sentence builder below and we'll send you the link. Now, to sound a bit more natural and not like a robot, we usually add at least one more element, the object. The object is the person or the thing that is affected by the action. For example, ich lese, I read. Eine Zeitung, a newspaper. So here, the newspaper is the object. Or, for example, ich lerne Deutsch. I learn German. So I have the subject, the verb, and the object. This gives us the most basic and most useful and common sentence pattern. Subject, verb, object. At this stage, the structure is actually very similar to English. You can translate word for word and still get a correct German sentence. Once this pattern is clear, you can start plugging in different vocabulary using the same building blocks. For example, Peter lernt English. Peter learns English. So instead of ich, I have Peter this time. The verb to learn stays the same, and then the object changed from Deutsch to English. You'll notice that the subject, the verb, and the object are color-coded. It's one of my favorite methods because it makes memorizing and recognizing patterns so much easier, especially when you're learning how to build sentences as a beginner. So if you are a visual learner, I highly recommend doing the same thing in your own notes and exercises. Now, this is where things often start to feel tricky, when we move beyond simple subject, verb, object sentences. So before we add anything new, there is one rule I want you to keep firmly in mind. The most important rule in German is that the verb is in the second position for statement sentences. If you remember one single concept from this video, make it this one. In German main sentences, the verb always goes in the second position. And this is crucial, not the second word, but the second position. Most word order mistakes happen because learners try to translate them directly from English, and that works fine as long as the sentence is very basic, just as what we had or learned before, subject, verb, object. But the moment you add more information, English logic no longer applies. So let's add one more component, a time word. Common time words you'll use all the time are, for example, heute or morgen or jetzt. Now here's the thing to remember, no matter what you add, the verb stays in the second position. So keeping that in mind, how would you say, Today, I learn German. Exactly. Heute lerne ich Deutsch. So literally, today learn I German. And how about now I read a newspaper? Genau. Jetzt lese ich eine Zeitung. At this stage, you don't need more grammar, you just need to fill these sentence patterns with vocabulary. That's why I've created the free sentence builder guide. It helps you put your own sentences together step by step. If you want it, just write sentence builder in the comments and we'll send you the link to download it for free. Now let's quickly recap what we have learned so far. We've covered the subject, so the thing or the person who is doing the action, the verb, which is the word for the action, then the object, which is the thing or the person that is affected by the action. And we've also added a time word. So with just these elements, you can already say a lot and narrate many of your daily activities in German. And that's exactly what I encourage you to do. It's one thing to understand sentence patterns. It's a whole other thing to actually use them. And this is one of my favorite exercises and something I teach my students all the time is simply narrating your day. Start describing what you're doing. Like for example, ich trinke Kaffee. Ich arbeite. Ich lerne Deutsch. Ich koche das Abendessen. Why is this so powerful? First of all, you build vocabulary that is directly relevant to your real life. And second, you train the muscle of putting sentences together because that's really what it is. It's a skill that you can practice and learn. And when someone says, I struggle to put sentences together, it usually just means they haven't practiced doing it often enough. Especially as adult learners, repetition and reinforcement are your best friends. Alright, now let's add one more very important component that you'll need all the time, which is the place. This is where many learners start to feel confused, mostly because of these small but tricky words called prepositions, like in, at, to, and so on. The tricky part is that these prepositions don't always translate one-to-one into German. And honestly, this can remain confusing even for advanced learners. Inside the German Fluency Academy, which is my signature program, we actually have multiple units just on prepositions. So yes, this is something that takes time to master. But before you throw your hands in the air and give up, here is the good news. You can already start using place expressions correctly if you learn them in chunks. That's why my recommendation is this. Don't learn prepositions as isolated words. Learn full expressions. For example, instead of separating at and home, learn at home, which is in German zu Hause. Or for example, at the office, which is in German im Büro. This is actually a perfect example for why translating word for word doesn't work. In English, you use at for both at home and at the office. In German, you use zu for zu Hause, but im for im Büro. So trying to memorize at as zu will only confuse you. Instead, learn the whole phrase. Store it as one unit, then plug it into your sentence patterns. This makes it so much easier. Now, you might ask, okay, I got this whole preposition chunking thing, but where does the place go in the sentence? Well, I'm glad you asked. Most of the time, the place goes toward the end of the sentence. It's not a fixed, unbreakable rule. Remember, German is quite flexible, but if there is no special emphasis, German follows a natural flow that often puts the place at the end. Let's take one of our earlier examples and add a place. Today, I learn German at home. Heute lerne ich Deutsch zu Hause. And just like that, you're building longer, more natural sentences without adding complicated grammar rules. If you want to train that sentence building muscle even more, just comment sentence builder below and we'll send you the link to my free sentence builder guide. It includes the most common verbs, useful time words, and ready to use place chunks so you can start practicing and putting your own German sentences together right away. I hope you have found today's lesson helpful and that German sentence structure feels a little less intimidating now. And if you haven't had enough of word order yet, I highly recommend watching the next video right here where I teach you the time, manner, place concept. It's the next step that will make your sentences sound even more natural and structured. Das ist alles für heute. Vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!